and I want to start out by saying my first jig double-digit fish came this last year. Peanut butter and jelly jig from Bijan. Check them out. So without further ado, let's get to the jig fishing tips and tricks. So first we're going to start out with a lure that is not really a jig. They make a couple different versions of these. Okay, so it's a skirted Ned Rig or mushroom head, this one. They make Ned Rigs like this. They also make one that I like a lot, is they have the head and the hook are separate, and the hook can swing, kind of like that U-head that I showed you guys, but they come skirted. So this is just the first little tip or trick. Look out for these. They're weedless, so if you want to throw like a Cinco or a jig and there's a lot of hydrilla or weeds, you can throw a Cinco on this bad boy. Has that jig skirt, but yet the weedless feature, you can pull that Cinco right through stuff. This flares up underwater, giving it a bigger profile. So number one would be something like this. Make sure you're looking for those little things. Okay. Number two is we're going to talk trailers. So we're going to talk about like what kind of trailers I throw. And we're going to break the jigs down here in a minute. But trailers, wanted to talk about, they affect the way that the jig falls through the water. So the bigger the trailer and the more appendages it has and the more water it disturbs, the slower that lure is going to fall. Also the lighter as well. So you may have a heavy jig, but if you put a big trailer on it, it may fall a lot slower, more than likely will. Depending on also the profile of the trailer and, like I said, how much water resistance it has. One of my favorite trailers to throw, and I throw it almost all the time on the jig, is going to be a missile bait D-bomb. I love these things. They just smack big fish. I actually like to just throw these, period, not even on a jig, but we're talking jigs today. So they make the baby D-bomb, which is one of my favorite, and this is the regular size. It's kind of big, so sometimes when they're short striking and taking these appendages off, I'll go down to the baby D-bomb to make my profile smaller. Okay, so that's one thing. Another thing, I like to use like hula grubs, Yamamoto hula grubs, stuff like that for jig trailers as well. This has got a lot of appendages. It's probably going to slow the jig down just a little bit, not too much, but that's another one of my favorite little trailers for the jig. Now I'm going to pull out some jigs here. We're going to talk jig color, and I've got a special tip or trick for you guys we're going to talk about here in a minute. But before we get into that, I wanted to talk about my jigs, jig head selection, jig type selection, color, and weight. Okay, so let's get those out of there. These are some Bijan jigs again. And then there's some Ansky's jigs, Ansky's tackle box. So I'm going to go over a couple of these right now. And again, thank you guys so much for supporting the channel. Don't forget to smash that subscribe and like button. Thank you very much. So here are probably my 4 favorite jigs. I'm going to throw a bonus 5th one in. All right, where is it? Right here. Here we go. All right. So, jigs, jig colors, right? Everybody knows about the black and blue jig, right? Very, very go-to, very successful, and an awesome color. In any kind of stained water, any kind of issues where you want the bass to see that silhouette, this black and blue is key, is magic. A lot of times I'll pair it up with something like a little black and blue crawdad. This, I believe, is a Ansky's tackle box. So check him out on Tug Addicts, the Facebook page. Ansky's tackle box at The Real Ansky. He makes soft pours, he makes jigs, and he makes all kinds of stuff. So I believe this, yeah, this is one of his. So I'd throw, you know, nice black and blue. Now we're going to get in really quick into trailer modifications. As you can see here, the skirt hangs down and covers all the appendages, right? So especially if these claws were more like this, right? Like the hula grub or something like that. I don't want these, I don't want the skirt interfering with the action. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this I'm going to measure it out about how far I want that skirt to hang. I'm going to take it here. I'm going to trim it. So it's important that you have a pair of scissors and take and trim your jig down. If you're throwing something that's got a lot of action, so that those so that these appendages can move free, and the bass, can see it, can see that obvious crawl design there, but the skirt still poofs up, giving it a big profile. So that's trailers. As far as like trimming your jig skirt, you want to make sure it's not interfering with the trailer. Second little puff ball like this, where the top's been trimmed like this. These are awesome little jigs right here. This is a round head jig. You see this round head right here? I'd use this like in rocks and stuff like that to try to help avoid it getting snagged. Football head is also great for that. These are the two jigs that I'm going to use in rocky areas and stuff like that. Now I want you to notice one thing really quick. I want you to take a look at all my jigs. All right, these are my 5 favorites. We're going to break them down a little more. But can anyone tell me what's missing on these jigs? No weed guard. All right, I don't ever use a weed guard. I'd rather go through 100 of these. What I'll do is I'll buy them by the bunch. I'll buy 30 or 40 at a time. I'll put them in. I'll use them one at a time. If I get snagged, I'll try to get it out, but I'm not going to go chase the snag down. I'll just snap my line, tie another one on. All right? So I do not go chasing these down. I'm not stressing on a $3 jig. Yeah, it's kind of, you don't want to throw money away. But I do not use weed guards. It's just like a Ned Rig, open hook. You don't have to set the hook as hard. You don't have to, let's say you kind of had your rod tip a little high and you get that little pick, that little tick, then you got to drop your rod tip, reel, and then set on them. You don't have to do that with this. With this, you just a little stick and you keep reeling, almost like a drop shot or a Ned Rig, but you want to give it a little force. Now this is my secret. I do not use weed guards. I hate them. Don't use them at all. Almost even in wood, I'd rather just snag up all the time. Now, if I know there's big bass in wood and I'm after them big bass, okay, I'm going to use a weed guard because I don't want to get snagged and then snap off or try to go get it out and scare my fish. So only when fishing heavy wood do I use a weed guard. Even in weeds, I use it weedless. Because just like a rattle trap, an LV 500 or a square bill, you can rip this bad boy out of the weeds. So I hope that one helps. You will stick so many more fish when they're short striking, and especially during spawn, when they just pick it up and then spit it out, or when they're kind of attacking it to kill it, or they want it off the bed. As soon as you feel that little tick, you don't have to drop and load up. You just bam, and they're on. So trust me, no weed guard, especially for these mothered load lakes. Get that weed guard gone. My biggest tip for you guys. Now here is my little kind of surprise tip or trick. So I want to get into this really quick. So for you guys who are still watching, sorry about the lawnmower. The neighbor's doing his lawn. I'm in my little man cave right here, so can't go out there and yell at him. I'm doing a video. Shut up. All right. So here's my little hidden tip or trick that a lot of guys don't know about that I'm aware of. And if you do know about this, leave a comment below. Let me know. I haven't seen many people doing this. Been doing it for years. And I'll tell you how it started out. A cool little story. So, talking trailers, right? Talking about how I love these missile baits and I love these hula grubs, right? I love these crawdad baits. You want to know a little secret? Straight tail worms for trailers, not crawdads. Check it out. This is one of my little secrets that I've been doing for many, many years. And how did it start? I'm going to tell you that right now. So, this is one of my little deadly secrets. Nobody throws a jig like this. Bass, they see everything. So when there's something different, I just love throwing something that not everybody else is throwing. This right here, secret technique. And I'll tell you how it started. It all started with spinner baits. So I'd be using a spinnerbait, right? And the skirt would rip or fall off, or it'd be my favorite spinnerbait. I'd tear a ton of fish off, with it, catch a ton of fish. Stupid little rubber band would break, and the skirt would fall off. Here I got this awesome spinnerbait, no skirt. Of course, what I'd do is we'd take, you got to remember, Kitex weren't around in the 90s, right? So there wasn't a lot of swim bait stuff. So I'd take these little like paddle tail things and put them on, but we used to just take straight tail worms, curly tail worms, all kinds of worms, and we'd put that on our spinnerbait. Now we would get smashed. So then when my jig skirt started doing the same thing, it'd fall off, I'd throw a straight tail worm on just the jig head, like a shaky head, and tear it up. So then I started realizing I could just put the worm on there like this, and I started catching a lot of fish doing this. So hope that little tip or trick helps out. Use straight tail worms as your jig trailers instead of crawdads. Now if the fish are short striking, one of the little tips or tricks you can do is cut the straight tail worm down so that there's not much of it showing at the end. This worm has much more action than this crawdad. Much more. So that is one of my biggest tips or tricks that I could give you guys for jig fishing. The two biggest ones is going to be no weed guard and experiment with your trailers. Secondly, we've gone over a bunch of different things. It's going to be the head design, right? I already talked about round and football. Well, if you're fishing in weeds, wood, if you're fishing in certain things, you want the head of that jig to have a different design. So let me go through my little jig bag and find some cool stuff for you. So we're almost done. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget we got a cool giveaway. So this one's a finesse jig. Again, shout out to Ansky's. This was one of his like Halloween specials. And let me tell you another little tip or trick. Weird colors work. A lot of guys be out there throwing the green pumpkin, peanut butter and jelly, black and blue, bluegill or crawdad colors. These weird colors, they actually work. I'd catch a ton of fish on pinks, purples, and oranges, and just all these weird colors. So, but we were talking about heads. So I want you to see the design on this head, right? This is more like something I would want to pull through the weeds. No weed guard, right? But this little guy right here, the design of the head will cut through the weeds a lot better than a round head. So when you're fishing in weeds, make sure you're using like a swim jig, a weed head. Make sure that the head, I don't even know if that's an actual thing as far as the head design. But, make sure that it's shaped kind of like a bullet weight, basically, right? That it's made to aerodynamically go through the weeds. And a circle and a football are not very aerodynamic at going through the weeds. So here's one that is kind of like the teardrop shape. This is also good for going through the weeds as well. It's okay. I prefer an actual swim jig, or like I said, one that's more shaped like this. Okay, last little tip or trick, you can actually go online, right? And you can buy blades for your jigs to turn them into chatterbaits. So you go to the store, you see the jackhammers, you see all these other brands, and they're going to have specific heads and designs for you. But if you have a favorite jig, like my peanut butter and jelly football head here, which I caught that double digit off of, then I would take and put this on this, let's say. Now the football head may not swim 100% correct, may want to use like the round head, But you can take your favorite jigs with your favorite weights from an ounce all the way down to these little tiny finesse guys, and you can put your own blades on them. So they have painted ones, silver. They have the the gold or copper colored ones, or brass, whatever it is. But they have a lot of different of these blades you can put on your own jig heads and make custom chatterbaits. So hope this little video tips and tricks helps out. Before we go, last few things I want to talk about. Try to start with the lightest weight possible. Throw it shallow, then move to heavier weights. Go deeper. You got to learn also the feel for the jig that you're using. Make sure you're using the right rod. I like a medium heavy. I like a little bit of backbone in my jig rod. I don't want too much softness in the tip, as I want to stick those fish, and I don't want to have to worry about laying into them real hard and snapping off, especially if I have a 10 or a giant and I set the hook real hard. No, that's another reason I also like no weed guards. You don't have to set the hook as hard. So thank you guys for staying tuned. I really appreciate it. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Don't forget, we're going to have a giveaway tonight. So thanks for watching Common Sense Fishing, and we'll see you guys on the next one.